The massive alien ship hung in space like a crystal mountain. Its surfaces reflected the light of distant stars in patterns that hurt human eyes to look at directly. Commander Jiho stood at the observation deck of the small human transport vessel, watching their destination grow larger with each passing minute. "First time seeing a Krillian structure up close," said Mirai, the expedition's chief scientist. She pressed her face against the viewing port. "The energy readings are incredible. Their technology is at least 300 years ahead of ours." Tactical Officer Dohyun checked his equipment one more time. "Maybe. But being advanced doesn't make you smart." He looked at the crystal ship with suspicious eyes. "Something feels wrong about this whole invitation." Commander Jiho turned away from the window. 3 weeks ago, Earth had received a message from something called the Galactic Council. The message was simple. Humanity was invited to join their community of civilized worlds. They would be given a trial membership and learn their place in the greater galaxy. Most people on Earth were excited. Finally, contact with alien life. Finally, proof that humanity was not alone. The politicians saw opportunities for trade and technology. The scientists dreamed of learning from species that had traveled the stars for thousands of years. But Jiho had read the message more carefully than most. The words were polite, but there was something underneath. The aliens spoke, like teachers talking to children, like masters calling to servants. They expected humanity to be grateful for this chance to serve. "Approaching Docking Bay 7, announced the pilot. "They're guiding us in with some kind of tractor beam." The human ship settled into the alien docking bay with barely a sound. The bay was enormous, easily large enough to hold 50 ships their size. But theirs was the only vessel present. Rows of empty docking clamps stretched into the distance like the ribs of some massive creature. 3 figures waited for them at the airlock. The Krillians were tall, at least 8 feet in height. Their bodies seemed to be made of living crystal that shifted colors as they moved. Where humans had faces, the Krillians had arrangements of glowing points that pulsed in complex patterns. "Welcome, small ones," said the center figure. Its voice came from somewhere inside its crystal body, deep and resonating like sound traveling through stone. "I am High Arbiter Vesthul. You stand in the presence of the Galactic Council's representatives." Commander Jiho stepped forward and gave a formal bow. "Thank you for receiving us, High Arbiter. I am Commander Jiho of Earth. This is Dr. Mirai, our chief scientist, and Lieutenant Dohyun, our security officer." The alien's light points flickered in what might have been amusement. "Security officer, how quaint, as if anything on this ship could threaten us." The other 2 Krillians made sounds like wind chimes in a storm. Laughter, Jiho realized. They were escorted through corridors that seemed carved from single pieces of crystal. The walls showed swirling patterns of color that moved like slow waterfalls. Everything was beautiful and alien and cold. The council chamber was a vast dome filled with floating platforms. Dozens of different alien species occupied, the platforms all watching as the humans entered. There were beings made of metal and wire, creatures that looked like living smoke and things that hurt to look at directly. "Behold," announced Vesthul to the assembly, "the newest candidates for membership in our great community, the species that calls itself human." A platform drifted closer. Its occupant looked like a giant insect with too many eyes. "They are very small," it observed, "and they appear to be made of simple flesh. How did such primitive beings achieve space travel?" "Luck," said another voice. This came from something that resembled a floating brain surrounded by tentacles. "They probably found some abandoned technology and copied it badly." Dr. Murray stepped forward. "Actually, we developed our space program independently over several decades. Our technology may be simpler than yours, but we built it ourselves from basic principles." The chamber filled with more wind chime laughter from the Krillians. Other species made sounds that were probably similar expressions of amusement. "How adorable," said Vesthul. "They think they invented something." The High Arbiter's platform rose higher, looking down at the humans. "Small ones, let us explain how things work in civilized space." The dome around them began to show images. Star systems, planets, fleets of ships. For 20,000 years, the elder species have maintained order in this galaxy. We have built trade networks, established laws, and brought peace to countless worlds. More images appeared. Alien cities, vast construction projects, fleets of ships moving in perfect formation. Lesser species are welcome to join us, of course. Everyone has a role to play in the great work. The images changed again. Now, they showed smaller species working in mines, tending agricultural projects, serving in various support roles. Newer species usually begin with simple tasks: mining operations, food production, basic maintenance work. As they prove themselves trustworthy, they may be given more responsibilities. Commander Jiho watched the images carefully. The smaller species in the pictures all had the same look in their eyes, the empty stare of people who had given up hope long ago. "What if a species prefers to remain independent?" asked Lieutenant Doyun. The laughter in the chamber died away. Several platforms moved closer, their occupants studying the humans with new interest. "Independent?" repeated Vesthul. The crystal being's light points flickered in patterns that seemed almost angry. "Small one, independence is a luxury that primitive species cannot afford. The galaxy is dangerous. There are pirates, hostile species, natural disasters. Only under our protection can younger civilizations survive and grow. But what if we choose to take those risks ourselves?" Jiho asked quietly. The High Arbiter's platform descended until the crystal being towered directly over the human commander. "Choice is an illusion, small one. Every species eventually learns this truth. You can join us willingly and be treated with kindness, or you can resist and learn why we have maintained peace for 20,000 years. The chamber fell silent. All the assembled aliens watched the humans, waiting for their response. "Commander." Jiho reached into his pocket and activated a small recording device. Then he looked up at the crystal being looming over him. "High Arbiter Vesthul and members of the Galactic Council, I want to make sure I understand your offer correctly." His voice was calm and steady. "You want humanity to give up our independence and serve as laborers for your civilization. In return, you promise not to attack us." "Such crude language," said Vesthul, "but essentially accurate." Jiho nodded slowly. "Then I'm afraid we must respectfully decline your generous offer." The silence stretched on for several long seconds. Then the chamber erupted in sounds that needed no translation. Shock, anger, disbelief. "You refuse?" The High Arbiter's voice had lost its amused tone. "You actually refuse our protection?" "We do." Jiho's expression remained perfectly calm. "Humanity prefers to remain independent." Vesthul's crystal body began to glow brighter, cycling through colors that made the human's eyes water. "Very well, small ones. We are not unreasonable. We will give you 7 rotations to reconsider your foolish decision. Use that time to think carefully about what you are choosing." The platform began to rise again. "When we next meet, you will either accept your proper place in the galactic order, or you will learn what happens to species that refuse the guidance of their betters." Commander Jiho bowed again, just as formally as before. "Thank you for your time, High Arbiter. Before we leave, I want to make sure you understand something important." The crystal being paused in its ascent. "Speak. We came here in peace. We offered friendship freely given between equals. You have chosen to respond with threats of violence and demands for submission." Jiho's voice carried clearly through the vast chamber. "I want you to remember that when we meet again. We came in peace. Remember that." The humans turned and walked calmly toward the chamber exit. Behind them, the assembled aliens began talking among themselves in dozens of languages. Most of the sounds were still amused. A few were beginning to sound concerned. As they reached their ship, Dr. Mireille looked back at the crystal structure one last time. "Do you think they'll actually attack us?" "They'll try," said Lieutenant Doyun. "Question is, are they ready for what they'll find when they do?" Commander Jiho sealed the airlock behind them and settled into his chair. "Send the message to Earth Command. Full priority. Tell them the negotiations have concluded. As their small ship detached from the alien vessel and began its journey home, Jiho made one final log entry. The aliens have revealed their true nature. They are not explorers or diplomats. They are conquerors who have convinced themselves they are civilizers. They expect us to submit without question because every other species has done so for 20,000 years. He paused, looking out at the stars. They are about to learn that humans are not like every other species. 3 months had passed since Commander Jiho's diplomatic mission returned to Earth. The Krillian deadline was only hours away, and Admiral Young-ho stood on the bridge of the UES Phantom, humanity's most advanced warship. Around him, his crew worked quietly at their stations, preparing for what would either be humanity's greatest victory or its final battle. "Admiral, we're detecting massive energy signatures at the edge of the solar system," reported Communications Officer Heejin. Her fingers danced across her control panel. "The alien fleet has arrived." On the main screen, space seemed to shimmer and tear. One by one, enormous crystal ships began to emerge from what looked like holes in reality itself. Each vessel was larger than anything humanity had ever built. Their surfaces gleamed with alien technology that made the darkness of space glow with reflected light. "Count them," ordered Admiral Young-ho. Lieutenant Sang-hyun worked frantically at his sensors. 200 ships, sir, maybe more. They're still coming through." His voice grew tighter with each reading. "Admiral, each of those ships is 10 times the size of our largest battlecruiser." Engineer So-young looked up from her station near the back of the bridge. "The Phantom protocol is ready for activation, sir. All systems are showing green across the board." Young-ho nodded. For months, Earth's best scientists and engineers had been working around the clock on Project Phantom. They had studied every piece of alien technology they could find, every energy reading from their brief encounter with the Krillians. What they discovered had changed everything. "Open a channel to all human vessels," Young-ho commanded. "This is Admiral Young-ho to all ships. Today we face an enemy that believes we are primitives to be enslaved or destroyed. They come to our home with overwhelming force because they think we are helpless." He paused, looking at the alien fleet on his screen. The crystal ships had begun to form into attack formations, moving with the precision of a force that had conquered countless worlds. But they made one critical mistake. They underestimated what humans can accomplish when their backs are against the wall. Today we show them that some species are not meant to be conquered. All ships begin Phase 1 of the Phantom Protocol. Throughout the solar system, human ships began to disappear. The technology was based on something Dr. Mirai had discovered during their encounter with the Galactic Council. The aliens relied heavily on sensors that tracked energy signatures and mass displacement. Their entire military doctrine was built around detecting enemy ships and overwhelming them with superior firepower. But the Phantom Protocol worked differently. Instead of hiding ships, it shifted them slightly out of normal spacetime. The human vessels still existed, but they occupied a dimension that alien sensors could not detect. They became ghosts in the void, invisible to everything except human detection systems. High Arbiter Vesthal stood in the command center of his flagship, the Crystal of Dominion. Around him, his tactical officers reported their findings with growing confusion. "High Arbiter, we are detecting no defensive installations around the primitive world," said Sub-Commander Kyle Thera. "No orbital platforms, no defense satellites, no military vessels of any kind." Vesthal's light patterns flickered with satisfaction. "Excellent. The small ones have realized the futility of resistance. Begin standard pacification procedures. Target their major population centers, but avoid complete destruction. We will need workers." The Krillian fleet moved into Earth's orbit, with the casual confidence of predators approaching helpless prey. Battle formations spread out to surround the planet, each group of ships taking position over a different continent. That was when the ghosts began their attack. The first Krillian vessel to die was a heavy cruiser positioned over the Pacific Ocean. One moment it was scanning for human military installations, and the next moment its entire rear section simply ceased to exist. Emergency alarms filled the ship as atmosphere vented into space through the perfectly smooth hole that had appeared in its hull. "What happened?" demanded the ship's captain. "Where did that attack come from?" His sensor officer's crystal body was flickering rapidly with panic. "Unknown, sir. We detected no weapons fire, no energy discharge, nothing. The damage just appeared." Before the captain could respond, another section of his ship vanished. Then another. Within minutes, the mighty cruiser was nothing but debris, floating in Earth's orbit. Similar scenes played out across the Krillian fleet. Ships would be functioning normally one moment, then pieces of them would simply disappear as if cut away by an invisible blade. The attacks came from everywhere and nowhere, leaving the aliens spinning in confusion. "All ships, emergency maneuvers," commanded Vestal. "We are under attack by an unknown force. Begin evasive patterns and increase sensor sweeps to maximum range." But their sensors showed nothing. Empty space surrounded them, the same empty space that had been there moments before. Yet their ships continued to die, carved apart by weapons they could not see or track. Captain Hyunwoo watched the chaos from the bridge of his stealth destroyer, the UES Shadowblade. His ship had just finished its third attack run against a Krillian battleship, removing the alien vessel's main weapons array with surgical precision. "Target eliminated," reported his weapons officer. "Moving to next target coordinates." The human ships moved through space like deadly phantoms, appearing just long enough to strike before fading back into their dimensional hiding place. The Krillian fleet, designed to fight conventional battles against visible enemies, found itself helpless against an opponent it could not see. Engineer So-young monitored the battle from her station aboard the Phantom. The readings from all human ships showed the same thing. The phase technology was working perfectly. They could strike at will while remaining completely invisible to alien detection systems. "Admiral, we've destroyed 30% of their fleet," she reported. "Our ships are reporting no damage and minimal energy expenditure. The aliens can't even find us to shoot back." But Admiral Young-ho was watching something else on his tactical display. The surviving Krillian ships had begun to pull, back from Earth, forming a defensive circle in high orbit. They were learning, adapting their tactics to deal with an invisible enemy. "They're not running," he observed. "They're regrouping. Signal all captains for Phase 2 of the operation." Captain Hyunwoo received the Admiral's orders and smiled grimly. Phase 2 was the part he had been looking forward to most. "Take us alongside their flagship," he ordered his pilot. "Time to deliver a message in person." The UES Shadowblade materialized less than a kilometer from the Crystal of Dominion, close enough that its hull filled the alien ship's viewports. But instead of firing weapons, it launched a single boarding pod. High Arbiter Vesthul watched in amazement as the small human craft approached his ship. Are they surrendering? Do they wish to negotiate? His question was answered when the boarding pod simply passed through his ship's hull as if the crystal walls were not there. Emergency alarms began sounding throughout the flagship as the pod materialized inside their most secure hangar bay. Captain Hyunwoo and his strike team emerged from the pod wearing armor that seemed to bend light around it. They moved through the Krillian ship like shadows made solid, their equipment allowing them to phase in and out of normal space at will. The alien security forces found themselves fighting enemies who could walk through walls, appear and disappear at will, and strike from angles that should have been impossible. Within an hour, the humans had complete control of the flagship's critical systems. But they did not kill a single alien. Instead, they systematically disabled every weapon, every engine, every communication system on the ship. The Krillians found themselves trapped aboard their own vessel, helpless but alive. Captain Hyunwoo made his way to the command center, where High Arbiter Vestal waited with his senior officers. The crystal being's light patterns were flickering rapidly with what could only be fear. "You," Vestal said, recognizing the human military uniform. "You are from the small ones who refused our offer." "That's right," Hyunwoo replied calmly. He placed a small device on the alien's command console. "This is a message for you to take back to your galactic council." The device projected a hologram of Admiral Young-ho. The human officer's voice was quiet, but carried clearly through the alien command center. "High Arbiter Vesthul and forces of the Krillian Empire. You came to our world expecting to find helpless primitives. Instead, you found that humanity has capabilities you never imagined. The hologram gestured to the disabled ship around them. We could have destroyed your entire fleet. We could have killed every one of your people, but we chose not to. Consider this our final warning. The image of Admiral Young-ho looked directly at Vestal. Return to your space. Tell your Galactic Council what happened here. Tell them that humanity offers friendship to those who approach us as equals. But we will not tolerate threats or demands for submission. The hologram flickered and continued. And tell them this. If any alien force approaches our space with hostile intent again, they will not receive the mercy we have shown you today. They will simply disappear, and no one will ever know what became of them. The projection ended, leaving the command center in silence. Captain Hunwoo looked around at the alien officers, his expression unreadable behind his helmet's visor. The news of the Krillian defeat traveled through the galaxy faster than light itself. On Zephyria Prime, Emperor Thalnos received the report in his throne room, surrounded by his most trusted military advisors. The massive reptilian being's scales shifted from deep blue to angry red as he listened to the impossible tale. You expect me to believe this nonsense? Thalnos roared, his voice echoing off the crystal walls. A single primitive world defeated the entire Krillian battle fleet. Impossible. General Corvin, his military commander, bowed low before speaking. My Emperor, we have confirmation from multiple sources. High Arbiter Vestal himself sent the report. Half their fleet was destroyed, and the survivors fled back to Krillian space. The Emperor's tail lashed behind him, a sign of extreme agitation. Vestal is a fool, but he is not a coward. If he retreated, there must be some explanation. He turned to face his science advisor. What do we know about these humans? Dr. Zelton, a tall, thin being with 4 arms and silver skin, consulted his datapad. Very little, my Emperor. They are a young species, barely 5,000 years past their Stone Age. Their technology appears crude by galactic standards. By all measurements, they should not pose a threat to anyone. Yet they defeated the Krillians. Thalnos mused. Perhaps Vestal grew soft over the centuries. The Krillians have not faced real resistance in 1,000 years. He stood up from his throne, his massive form towering over his advisors. Ready the first armada. We will show these humans what real military power looks like. On Earth, Dr. Unji worked late into the night in her laboratory beneath the Pacific Ocean. The Xenobiology Division had been studying alien prisoners and captured technology for months, searching for weaknesses that could be exploited. What she had discovered would change everything. Admiral Young-ho needs to see this immediately, she told her assistant Dr. Kwang-soo. Send him a priority message. Tell him we found their weakness. The next morning, Admiral Young-ho stood in the secure briefing room, studying the data that Dr. Yoonji had collected. Around the table sat the leaders of Earth's military forces, including Captain Hyunwoo and Engineer So-young. Explain it to me again, said the Admiral, but use simple words. I'm a soldier, not a scientist. Dr. Yoonji activated the holographic display, showing the brain structure of various alien species. Every major galactic civilization shares one common trait. They all evolved with quantum neural interfaces that connect their minds directly to their technology. She pointed to the glowing pathways in the alien brain scans. This allows them to control their ships, weapons, and communication systems through thought alone. It's incredibly efficient and gives them reaction times far superior to manual controls. Captain Hyunwoo leaned forward. But there's a downside, isn't there? Exactly. Dr. Yoonji smiled grimly. The neural interfaces operate on specific quantum frequencies. If you can disrupt those frequencies, you can sever the connection between the aliens and their technology. Engineer So-young's eyes widened with understanding. They become helpless. Their ships, their weapons, everything stops working. More than that, Dr. Yoonji continued. The disruption causes feedback through their neural pathways. It doesn't kill them, but it renders them unconscious for hours. An entire fleet could be disabled with a single transmission. Admiral Young-ho studied the data carefully. And humans don't have these neural interfaces? We're the only known species that developed technology through purely mechanical means, Dr. Yunji confirmed. Our brains evolved differently. We're completely immune to this kind of neural disruption. 3 weeks later, the Zephyrian Empire's first armada arrived at the edge of the solar system. Emperor Thalnos commanded the fleet personally from his flagship, the Eternal Dominion. The armada consisted of 500 vessels, each one a masterpiece of Zephyrian military engineering. "There," said General Corvin, pointing at the small blue planet on the main display. "Target confirmed. No defensive installations visible. No military vessels in orbit." Emperor Thalnos studied the peaceful world with suspicious eyes. "It looks harmless enough, but so did a Krillian fleet before these humans destroyed it." He turned to his communications officer. "Send a message to the planet. Tell them they have one chance to surrender unconditionally." The reply came back within an hour. It was a simple message from Admiral Young-ho. "Emperor Thalnos of the Zephyrian Empire, we reject your demand for surrender. If you wish to avoid the fate of the Krillian fleet, you will leave our space immediately." The Emperor's roar of anger could be heard throughout his flagship. "Insolent primitives, begin the attack. Show them the power of the Zephyrian Empire." The alien fleet moved into Earth's orbit with perfect precision. Unlike the Krillians, the Zephyrians had studied the previous battle carefully. They spread out across a wider area and kept their sensors sweeping constantly, watching for the phantom ships that had destroyed their predecessors. Communications Officer Sujin sat at her station aboard the UES Phantom, watching the enemy fleet take positions around Earth. In front of her was a device that Dr. Yunji had called the Neural Cascade Transmitter. It was small, barely the size of a briefcase, but it contained the power to end this battle before it began. "All ships report ready, Admiral," she said to Young-ho. "The Phantom fleet is in position and waiting for your orders." Admiral Young-ho watched the alien vessels on his screen. 500 ships, each one larger and more powerful than anything in Earth's fleet. Under normal circumstances, humanity would not stand a chance against such overwhelming force. But these were not normal circumstances, so "Signal all ships," he commanded. "Prepare for neural cascade transmission on my mark." Throughout the solar system, human vessels powered up their transmitters. The technology was based on Dr. Yunji's research, combined with the phase manipulation systems that made the Phantom fleet possible. The result was a weapon unlike anything the galaxy had ever seen. "Mark," said Admiral Young-ho quietly. The transmission lasted exactly 3 seconds. To the Zephyrian fleet, it appeared as nothing more than a brief static burst on their communication channels. Most of the alien crew members didn't even notice it, but the effect was immediate and devastating. On the Eternal Dominion, Emperor Thalnos was in the middle of giving attack orders when every light on the bridge suddenly went dark. The main display flickered and died. The artificial gravity failed, leaving the crew floating helplessly in their command chairs. "What's happening?" the Emperor demanded. "Report!" But his officers could not respond. One by one, they were falling unconscious as the neural feedback from their severed interfaces overwhelmed their nervous systems. Within minutes, the entire bridge crew was floating unconscious in the darkness. The same scene played out across the entire Zephyrian fleet. 500 mighty warships became lifeless hulks drifting in space, their crews rendered helpless by a weapon they had never imagined possible. Captain Hyunwoo led a boarding party to the Eternal Dominion, phasing through the ship's hull just as he had done with the Krillian flagship. But this time there was no resistance. The alien crew lay unconscious at their stations, breathing but unresponsive. He made his way to the bridge where Emperor Thalnos floated near his command throne. The massive reptilian was still conscious, but barely. His neural interface had been more heavily shielded than those of his crew, allowing him to resist the cascade effect longer than the others. "You," Thalnos whispered weakly. "What did you do to my fleet?" Captain Hyunwoo placed another message device on the Emperor's throne. "We gave you the same warning we gave the Krillians. You chose not to listen." The message device activated, showing a hologram of Admiral Young-ho. The human officer looked directly at the defeated Emperor. "Emperor Thalnos, your fleet has been disabled but not destroyed. Your crews are unharmed but will remain unconscious for several hours. This is our final warning to the Zephyrian Empire. The hologram continued. Return to your space. Tell the other galactic powers what you have witnessed here. Humanity seeks peaceful coexistence with all species, but we will not tolerate attempts at conquest or subjugation. Admiral Young-ho's image leaned forward slightly. And tell them this. We now possess weapons that can disable any fleet in the galaxy within seconds. We prefer not to use them, but we will if forced to defend ourselves. The transmission ended, leaving Emperor Thalnos alone with his thoughts and his unconscious crew. As feeling slowly returned to his massive body, he began to understand the true horror of what had happened. These humans had not just defeated his fleet. They had made it irrelevant. Every advantage that the galactic powers possessed, every piece of superior technology, every tactical doctrine developed over thousands of years, all of it meant nothing against an enemy who could shut down neural interfaces with a simple transmission. 6 hours later, the Zephyrian crews began to wake up. Emperor Thalnos gave the order to retreat, gathering his humiliated fleet for the long journey home. As they departed Earth's solar system, he sent a message to every major power in the galaxy. The message was simple, but carried the weight of absolute certainty. Do not engage the humans in battle. They possess capabilities that make conventional warfare impossible. Recommend immediate diplomatic contact to prevent further conflicts. On Earth, Admiral Young-ho received reports of the emergency session of the Galactic Council convened on the neutral world of Nexus 7. Representatives from dozens of species gathered in the ancient amphitheater, their voices creating a cacophony of concern and disbelief. The defeats of both the Krillian Empire and the Zephyrian Armada had sent shockwaves throughout civilized space. Chancellor Vextar of the Nexari Collective stood at the center podium, his insectoid features twitching with nervous energy. Fellow beings, we face an unprecedented threat. 2 of our most powerful military forces have been humiliated by a single primitive world. Ambassador Threnkor of the Thaxian Commonwealth raised one of his 6 arms. The crystalline being's voice rang through the chamber. Perhaps humiliated is too strong a word. Perhaps they simply encountered unexpected resistance and chose the wise path of retreat. Retreat? The voice came from Empress Silara of the Ethereal, Dominion, a being of pure energy contained within a shimmering force field. Threnkor, your optimism blinds you to reality. The reports are clear. The humans possess technology we do not understand. Scout leader Dongyun listened to the debate from his position in the shadows high above the council floor. His stealth suit made him invisible to all known sensor types, and his translation device allowed him to understand every word spoken in the chamber below. For 3 days he had been gathering intelligence on the alien alliance that was forming against Earth. The debate continued for hours. Some species argued for immediate military action, claiming that humanity must be destroyed before they could develop even more dangerous weapons. Others counseled caution, suggesting diplomatic contact to learn more about human capabilities. But Dongyun noticed that none of the species questioned their right to decide humanity's fate. Even those who spoke of diplomacy talked about managing the human threat, not about accepting humans as equals. To them, Earth was still just a problem to be solved. General Nari received Dongyun's report in the war room beneath the Pacific Ocean. Around the table sat Earth's military and scientific leadership, including Admiral Young-ho, Dr. Yunji, and Captain Hunwoo. The holographic display showed detailed schematics of alien military installations throughout the galaxy. They're planning something big, Dongyun reported through the secure communication link. 3 major powers are working together: the Nexari Collective, the Thaxian Commonwealth, and the Ethereal Dominion. They're calling it the Galactic Stabilization Force. Admiral Young-ho studied the tactical readouts. How many ships are we looking at? Conservative estimate? 2,000 vessels, maybe more. They're pulling military assets from across their territories. Donghyun's voice carried through the speakers with professional calm. But sir, there's something else. Something more important. General Nari leaned forward. What is it? I've been monitoring their private communications for weeks. The alien leaders aren't just planning to attack us. They're terrified of us. There was a pause before Dong-hyun continued. They keep talking about the other species, the ones that came before us. Dr. Yoonji looked up from her datapad. What other species? Apparently, we're not the first to refuse their demands for submission. Over the past 20,000 years, there have been others. Species that fought back, that resisted galactic authority. Dong-hyun's voice grew quieter. But none of them exist anymore. The room fell silent as the implications became clear. Captain Hunwoo was the first to speak. They destroyed them. All of them. Every single one, Dong-hyun confirmed. Entire civilizations wiped out because they refused to become slaves. The aliens don't see themselves as conquerors. They think they're maintaining galactic stability by eliminating any species that might disrupt their order. Cryptographer Junho had been working quietly at his station during the briefing, analyzing the captured alien databases that Dong-hyun had transmitted. Now he looked up with a mixture of disgust and fascination on his face. General, you need to see this, he said, activating the main holographic display. I've been going through their historical records. The pattern is always the same. The display showed a timeline spanning thousands of years. Species after species appeared and then vanished, marked with the same notation, pacification complete. The Vellani Republic, destroyed 3,000 years ago for refusing to surrender their military fleet. The Korvash Confederacy, eliminated 2,000 years ago for attempting to form an independent alliance. The Tethran Union, wiped out just 500 years ago for developing advanced defensive technology. Junho manipulated the display, showing battle reports and casualty figures. In every case, the galactic powers claimed they were acting to preserve peace and stability. But the real reason was always the same. These species refused to submit. General Nari stood up and walked to the display, studying the long list of extinct civilizations. How many? Over the past 20,000 years, 47 species completely destroyed, hundreds more conquered and enslaved. Junho's voice was quiet. We're looking at the galaxy's greatest mass murderers, and they've convinced themselves they're heroes. Admiral Young-ho felt a cold anger building in his chest. They're planning to do the same thing to us. Worse, said Dr. Yoonji, consulting her own research files. According to their psychological profiles, humans represent their greatest fear. We're the first species they've encountered that can't be controlled through conventional means. Our immunity to neural cascade weapons and our phase manipulation technology make us unpredictable. She activated another section of the display, showing alien military communications. They're not just planning to defeat us. They want to make an example of us, complete annihilation, broadcast across the galaxy to discourage any other species from following our example. The room remained silent for several minutes as everyone processed this information. Finally, General Nari turned to address the group. Ladies and gentlemen, we now know what we're really fighting. This isn't about territorial disputes or trade disagreements. This is about the right of intelligent species to exist without bowing to self-appointed masters. She gestured to the holographic timeline showing the extinct civilizations. 47 species died because they wanted to be free. They fought bravely, but they fought alone. Each one fell because they didn't have allies, didn't have the technology, or didn't have the time to prepare properly. General Nari's voice grew stronger. But we are not them. We have advantages they never possessed. We have the phase technology. We have weapons that can disable their fleets instantly. And most importantly, we know what we're fighting for. Captain Hyunwoo nodded grimly. What are your orders, General? First, we accelerate the defense preparations. If they want to bring 2,000 ships against us, we need to be ready. She turned to Dr. Yoonji. How quickly can you expand the neural cascade network? With the resources you've allocated, we can have transmitters positioned throughout the solar system within 2 weeks. Any alien fleet that enters our space will be disabled before they can fire a single shot. Good. What about the phase fleet? Engineer So-young answered from her position at the engineering station. We now have 200 ships equipped with full phase manipulation systems. More are coming online every day. Within a month, we'll have the largest invisible fleet in galactic history. General Nari nodded with satisfaction. And Dongyun, I want you to expand your intelligence operations. If the aliens are evacuating their border worlds, I want to know about it before they do. Already in progress, General. We have scouts positioned throughout their territories. Any major fleet movements will be detected immediately. As the meeting broke up, Admiral Young-ho remained behind to speak with General Nari privately. Do you really think we can win against 2,000 ships? The question isn't whether we can win, she replied, looking out at the stars through the underground facility's observation window. The question is whether we can do it without becoming the monsters they think we are. Admiral Young-ho understood what she meant. The aliens expected humans to fight like every other species they had conquered, desperately, brutally, with growing desperation as defeat became inevitable. But humanity had a different approach. We're not going to destroy their fleets, are we? He said. Destroy them? No. That's what they would do to us. General Nari turned away from the window. We're going to do something much more frightening to beings who see themselves as the rightful rulers of the galaxy. Which is? General Nari smiled, but there was no warmth in the expression. We're going to make them disappear. That night, Scout Leader Dong-hyun sent his final report from the Galactic Council meeting. The Alien Alliance had finalized their plans. In 3 months, the largest military fleet in galactic history would descend on Earth, with the goal of completely destroying human civilization. What the aliens didn't know was that humanity was no longer preparing to defend Earth. They were preparing to go on the offensive. Dr. Yunji had made another breakthrough in her research on alien neural interfaces. Not only could humans disable the aliens' connection to their technology, they could also track the quantum signatures of every alien in the galaxy. No matter where they fled, no matter how they tried to hide, humans would be able to find them. The technology that had once allowed aliens to conquer 47 species was about to become their greatest weakness. The Galactic Stabilization Force approached the Sol system with the confidence of predators who had never known defeat. 2,000 ships from 3 major civilizations moved in perfect formation through the void, their combined firepower capable of cracking planets and boiling oceans. Fleet Admiral Korthak of the Nexari Collective stood in the command center of his flagship, the Inevitable Victory. His compound eyes studied the tactical displays showing his massive fleet stretching across space like a metal constellation. Beside him, General Vexhan of the Thaxion Commonwealth and Admiral Silneth of the Ethereal Dominion monitored their own forces. Final sensor sweep of the target system, ordered Korthak. His insectoid voice clicked with anticipation. I want to know the position of every human vessel, every defensive installation, every military asset they possess. The sensor operator, a young Nexari named Kliktar, worked frantically at his console. After several minutes, he looked up with confusion. Fleet Admiral, I'm not detecting anything. Explain, demanded General Vexhan, his crystalline body pulsing with impatient light. The entire Sol system appears to be empty, sir. No planets, no star, no space stations. Nothing but void. Admiral Silneth's energy field flickered with annoyance. Impossible. Our intelligence reports confirmed human activity in that system less than a week ago. Check your instruments. Kliktar ran the sensors again, then a third time. All instruments. Functioning normally, Admiral. The system is completely empty. It's as if the star and all its planets simply vanished. The 3 fleet commanders looked at each other with growing unease. In 40,000 years of galactic history, no one had ever heard of an entire star system disappearing. Advance Scout, formations, ordered Korthak finally. Send them into the void. There must be some explanation for this. Unknown to the alien fleet, their every move was being watched from humanity's hidden command center. President Arium sat in the Situation Room deep beneath the Earth's crust, surrounded by holographic displays showing the alien armada's approach. Around her, the leaders of Earth's military and scientific communities monitored the greatest deception in human history. Phase displacement is holding steady, reported Chief Engineer So-young from her control station. The entire Sol system is successfully hidden in parallel dimensional space. The alien sensors are detecting nothing but empty void. Dr. Yunji looked up from her research station. The dimensional anchor points are stable. We can maintain this displacement indefinitely without risk to the planetary population. Admiral Young-ho studied the tactical display showing the alien fleet. 2,000 ships, exactly as our intelligence predicted. Are all our strike teams in position? General Nari nodded from her command post. Operation Silent Night is ready. To begin on your order, Madam President. President Ariam had been elected just 3 months earlier, chosen specifically because of her background in both military strategy and diplomatic negotiations. She understood that what happened in the next few hours would determine not just humanity's survival, but the future of freedom throughout the galaxy. The aliens have spent 20,000 years convincing themselves that they are the rightful rulers of all intelligent life, she said to the assembled commanders. Today we show them what happens when their victims learn to fight back, she turned to Admiral Young-ho. Begin the operation. Throughout the galaxy, human strike teams that had been positioned in secret for months began to move. The phase manipulation technology that made Earth invisible also allowed small groups of humans to infiltrate the most secure locations in alien space without being detected. Captain Taehyun led Alpha Team through the corridors of the Nexari High, command on their homeworld of Nexus Prime. His team moved like shadows, phasing in and out of normal space to avoid security sensors and guard patrols. Their target was the Central Command Authority, the nerve center that controlled all Nexari military operations. Target acquired, Taehyun reported through his quantum communicator. Nexari Supreme Commander Velkoth is in his private chambers, along with his senior staff. Similar reports came in from teams throughout alien space. Beta Team had located the Thaxian High Council on Crystal World. Gamma Team had found the ethereal dominion's ruling consciousness in its dimensional fortress. Dozens of other teams reported successful infiltration of military bases, research, facilities, and government centers. All teams report ready, General Nari announced to President Ariam, waiting for final authorization. President Ariam looked around the command center one last time. In her hand, she held a communication device that would broadcast the same message to every alien leader simultaneously. The message was simple: surrender unconditionally or disappear forever. Madam President, Admiral Young-ho said quietly, we could still offer them one final chance to withdraw. They've had 20,000 years of chances, she replied. 47 extinct civilizations worth of chances. Today the cycle ends. She activated the communication device. Throughout alien space, the leaders of the Galactic Stabilization Force received the same transmission simultaneously. The image of President Ariam appeared on their personal communication screens, speaking in a calm, measured tone. Leaders of the Galactic Council, I am President Ariam of Earth. You are currently watching the largest fleet in your history fail to locate our star system because we have moved it beyond your ability to detect. On their flagships, the alien commanders stared at the transmission in disbelief. At this moment, President Ariam continued, human forces are positioned throughout your territories. We know the location of every military installation, every government center, every leader of significance in your civilizations. The image leaned forward slightly. You have built your galactic order on the systematic destruction of any species that refuse to bow to your authority. Today that order ends. Supreme Commander Velkoth watched the transmission from his supposedly secure command bunker on Nexus Prime. Around him, his senior staff looked on in growing panic as alarms began sounding throughout the facility. You have 60 seconds to order the complete withdrawal of your forces from our space, President Ariam's image said. If you refuse, you will join the 47 species you destroyed. The difference is that we will not kill you. We will simply make you disappear. The transmission ended, leaving the alien leaders staring at blank screens. Velkoth immediately tried to contact his fleet commanders, but his communication systems had been disabled. He reached for his emergency command console, only to find it had been somehow removed from its mounting without leaving any trace of damage. Sir, whispered his aide, pointing toward the command center entrance. Look. Captain Taehyun stood in the doorway. clearly visible despite the fact that he had somehow passed through multiple layers of security without triggering a single alarm. Behind him, the shadows seemed to shift and move, suggesting the presence of his entire strike team. Supreme Commander Velkoth, Taehyun said politely, you have 30 seconds remaining to issue withdrawal orders to your fleet. Similar scenes played out simultaneously across the galaxy. Alien leaders found themselves face to face with human soldiers who had appeared from nowhere in their most secure locations. The humans made no threats and showed no weapons. They simply stood there, waiting. Fleet Admiral Korthak received no response to his desperate communications with Nexus Prime. Neither did General Vexhan or Admiral Silneth when they tried to contact their homeworlds. The massive fleet hung in empty space, cut off from all higher authority. Sir, reported the sensor operator, we're detecting massive energy discharges throughout the galaxy. Something is happening on every major world simultaneously. What was happening was the systematic displacement of the entire alien leadership into parallel dimensional space. One by one, government officials, military commanders, and ruling council members simply vanished from normal reality. They were not killed or injured. They were simply moved to a place where they could no longer threaten anyone. The process was remarkably gentle. Alien leaders who had expected to die in battle instead found themselves in comfortable holding areas constructed in dimensional space. They had food, water, and shelter. They were completely unharmed. They were also completely powerless. Kirstier. Displacement complete, reported Engineer Soyoung. All primary alien leadership has been successfully relocated to dimensional containment. President Ariam nodded with satisfaction. And the fleets? Without their command structure, the alien ships are holding position and requesting orders, Admiral Young-ho replied. Their crews don't know what to do without authority figures to give them directions. Dr. Yoonji looked up from her monitoring station. The neural cascade transmitters are ready if any ships attempt hostile action. But no hostile action came. The massive galactic stabilization force, deprived of leadership and facing an enemy they could not locate or understand, simply waited in the void for orders that would never come. General Nari activated the fleet-wide communication system. Attention vessels of the Galactic Stabilization Force. This is General Nari of Earth Defense Command. Your leaders have been removed from power for crimes against intelligent life. Her voice carried clearly to every ship in the alien armada. You have a choice to make. You can return to your homeworlds and... 6 months after Operation Silent Night, Explorer Captain Seokjin piloted his survey vessel through what had once been the heart of the Nexari Collective. The UES Discovery moved silently between abandoned space stations and drifting cargo haulers, documenting the aftermath of humanity's intervention. It's like flying through a graveyard, said Navigator Hannel from her position at the helm. All this technology, all these installations, but no one operating them. Science Officer Jiwon looked up from her sensor readings. The automated systems are still functioning. Life support, basic maintenance, emergency protocols. But there's no command structure, no coordination between facilities. Captain Seokjin studied the massive trading station that dominated their view screen. The Nexari Grand Exchange had once been the economic heart of this sector, processing trillions of credits worth of interstellar commerce every day. Now it hung empty in space, its docking bays vacant and its trading floors silent. Any signs of the civilian population? He asked. Long-range sensors detect scattered settlements on the outlying worlds, Jiwon reported. But they appear to be small, isolated communities. Nothing like the massive population centers that existed before. Captain Seokjin nodded grimly. The reports from other survey teams painted the same picture throughout former alien space. Without their leadership structure, the great galactic civilizations had simply collapsed. Some worlds had descended into chaos. Others had broken apart into smaller tribal groups. A few had managed to establish new governments, but they were shadows of their former power. Captain, called Communications Officer Minhyuk from his station. We're receiving a transmission from the planet below. It's in the old Nexari language. Put it through the translator, Seokjin ordered. The voice that came through the speakers was weak and frightened. Unknown vessel, This is Settlement Leader Krikstal of New Harmony Colony. Please identify yourself. We mean no harm to anyone. Captain. Sukjin activated the reply channel. This is Captain Sukjin of the Earth Vessel Discovery. We're conducting a peaceful survey of this region. Do you require assistance? There was a long pause before the alien voice responded. Earth Vessel? You are the humans. We are. As I said, we're conducting a peaceful survey. We're not here to threaten anyone. Another pause, even longer this time. Captain Seokjin, would it be possible for us to meet? There are things we need to tell you, things the galaxy should know. 3 hours later, Captain Seokjin and his team sat in the modest meeting hall of New Harmony Colony. The settlement was small, housing perhaps 1,000 Nexari civilians who had managed to escape the chaos that followed their government's disappearance. Settlement leader Krikstal was an elderly Nexari whose compound eyes had grown dim with age. Unlike the arrogant military leaders humanity had encountered before, he spoke with the quiet dignity of someone who had seen too much suffering. Captain, before I begin, I must ask you something, Krikstal said. Our leaders, the ones who vanished during the war, are they dead? Captain Seokjin chose his words carefully. They are alive but removed from power. They can no longer harm anyone. Krikstal's antennae drooped with what might have been relief. Good. They deserved worse, but I'm glad you chose mercy over justice. Science Officer Jiwon leaned forward. What do you mean they deserved worse? The old Nexari was quiet for a long moment, then activated a holographic display that filled the room with images. These are the records we saved when our government fell. The true records, not the propaganda they fed to the civilian population. The images showed scenes of systematic destruction. Entire worlds reduced to ash, populations herded into slave camps, children separated from their families and shipped to work colonies. The scope of the atrocities was beyond anything humanity had imagined. The Galactic Council told us we were bringing civilization to primitive species. Krikstal continued, his voice heavy with shame. They said the wars were necessary to maintain peace and order. Most of us believed them. Navigator Hanel stared at the horrible images. You didn't know? Some suspected. A few tried to speak out. But the government controlled all information, all communication. Those who asked too many questions simply disappeared. Krikstal manipulated the display, showing internal documents marked with security codes. It was only after the leadership vanished that we gained access to their private files. Captain Seokjin studied the documents, using his translator to understand the alien text. What he read made his blood run cold. The galactic powers had not just conquered other species, they had systematically tortured them, experimented on them, and in many cases exterminated them for entertainment. How many people knew the truth? He asked. Perhaps 1 in 1,000, Krikstal replied. The rest of us lived our lives believing we were the heroes of galactic civilization. When your people made our leaders disappear, most civilians thought it was some kind of mistake. It took weeks before the truth began to spread. The old Nexari stood up and walked to a window overlooking the small settlement. Do you see this colony, Captain? 700 families, trying to build something decent from the ruins of our civilization. But we are not the only ones. He activated another section of the display, showing communication logs from across former Nexari space. Similar settlements have formed on dozens of worlds, small communities of people who want nothing to do with the old ways. We call ourselves the Awakened. Science Officer Jiwon studied the communication logs. How many of you are there? Millions across all the former galactic powers, beings who have rejected the old system of conquest and oppression. We're trying to build something new, something based on cooperation instead of domination. Captain Seokjin felt a mixture of hope and sadness. What about the others? The ones who haven't awakened? Krikstal's expression grew darker. Some have retreated to isolated worlds, trying to recreate the old military structures. Others have descended into barbarism, fighting over the scraps of their former empires, and he paused. A few blame humanity for everything and speak of revenge. Communications Officer Minhyuk looked up from his monitoring station. Captain, we're receiving a priority transmission from Earth Command. The holographic image of Admiral Young-ho appeared in the center of the meeting hall. Even through the quantum communication link, his expression was clearly troubled. Captain, Seokjin, I need you to return to Earth immediately. We have a situation developing. What kind of situation, sir? The kind that requires all of our survey teams to come home. Now, Admiral Young-ho's image flickered as the transmission began to break up. We've detected organized military activity in several sectors. It appears some of the alien factions are attempting to rebuild their fleets. The transmission ended, leaving the meeting hall in tense silence. Settlement leader Crystal looked at the humans with worried eyes. Captain, there is something else you should know. Before your Admiral's message arrived, we intercepted communications from the Outer Rim territories. Someone calling himself the True Voice of the Galaxy has been broadcasting messages to all remaining military units. What kind of messages? Calls for unity against the human threat. Claims that your people are demons who must be destroyed to restore galactic order. Crystal's antennae twitched nervously. The broadcasts are gaining followers, especially among the younger military officers who escaped the initial displacement. Captain Seokjin stood up, his expression grim. How many ships do they have? Unknown but growing. They're gathering in the dark nebula region beyond the reach of your surveillance networks. Crystal walked over to Captain Seokjin and placed one of his insectoid hands on the human's shoulder. Captain, you must understand something. Your people showed mercy to our leaders when you could have destroyed them. But mercy is seen as weakness by those who worship strength. As the human survey team prepared to leave New Harmony Colony, Crystal made one final statement that would haunt Captain Seokjin during the long journey back to Earth. Your people ended 20,000 years of galactic tyranny in a single day. But some monsters do not die easily, and wounded predators are often the most dangerous of all. 2 weeks later, Captain Seokjin stood in the briefing room at Earth Command, delivering his report to the assembled leadership. President Ariam listened carefully as he described the divided state of former alien space. So we have 3 groups, she summarized when he finished. The awakened who want to build peaceful societies. The scattered, who have retreated into isolation or barbarism. And the remnants, who are actively organizing against us. That's correct, Madam President, Captain Seokjin confirmed. The remnants appear to be the most dangerous. They've learned from the previous defeats and are developing new tactics specifically designed to counter our capabilities. Admiral Young-ho activated the main holographic display, showing intelligence reports from across the galaxy. Our deep space monitoring stations have detected at least 50 ships gathering in the dark nebula. They're using some kind of new shielding technology that makes them difficult to track. Dr. Yunji looked up from her analysis station. I've been studying the communication intercepts from this True Voice of the Galaxy. The signal patterns suggest it's not a single individual. It appears to be some kind of collective intelligence, possibly an artificial construct.